welcome to our pre-concert chat here for this next Lincoln's Symphony Orchestra concert. I'm Genevieve Randall, Music Director at Nebraska Public Media, where we do sometimes broadcast these concerts on our occasional series, Nebraska Concerts. We are so proud to support Lincoln's Symphony Orchestra with these pre-concert chats, and I am joined by our beloved Ed Polachek, the maestro of Lincoln Symphony Orchestra here, as I call him, my beloved Ed. Ed, welcome. It's good to see you.
That's great. And I just realized when you were making that introduction that we're both music directors. I love it.
Well, that's true.
We're twins, Genevieve. I don't know if I've ever told you that, but that's the way it goes. What a good, thank you so much, and how great it is always to be with you to talk and to talk about particularly our concerts that we especially feature some of these incredible soloists / conductors or composers. So it's a great time, and we're really very appreciative of it.
Well, I have to admit to you, Ed, I'm going to try not to fangirl too much because I have been a fan of Béla Fleck for a long, long time. He can
Yeah.
play anything. And I'm trying to remember when I saw that interview. I learned from an interview he did with a YouTuber about this Rhapsody in Blue transcription that he had started working on because I guess he was bored during the pandemic. And him talking about how difficult it is to make decisions about where to put what note because you don't have the same amount of octaves on a banjo that you do on a piano, for example. And so how are you fitting the banjo with the orchestra as opposed to a piano, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And he was inspired because this is the 100th anniversary this year of
Exactly.
that particular piece. I
Exactly.
was curious what your first exposure to Rhapsody in Blue was, and then I want to ask about this arrangement.
My first exposure to Rhapsody in Blue was when I was a child. And I had heard and seen actually on television Leonard Bernstein playing it and conducting it at the same time. Turns out that the version and there's a recording of it actually that I listened to just recently, that version that Leonard Bernstein did has a lot of cuts in it. It's not the full piece of the Rhapsody in Blue that Gershwin originally wrote, and it was actually Ferdy Grofé who did the orchestration for that. He did a smaller orchestration, then he enlarged it to full symphony orchestra, which is the one that you usually hear of nowadays, and it's the one that we are going to be using at our concert on Saturday evening. So I've played the piece, I've conducted it many times, and I'm always very cognizant of the fact that performers who do this piece do certain cuts, because there are a lot of cadenzas, these solo passages for just the piano, in this case just the banjo, but and a lot of pianists, they cut from here to there and here to there. And I actually, one of my soloists years ago got caught because she forgot that she had made the cut, and in the rehearsal played it kind of straight through, and then in performance made the cut. And I'm in front of the orchestra saying, "Skip to letter M, skip to letter M." But that happens. That's always the excitement, the beauty, and the anxiety producing of live performance. What you said about transcribing a piece like this, that a piano, obviously 88 keys, and we have 10 fingers that sometimes can play more than 10 notes if we use our thumb to hit down 2, et cetera, et cetera. On a banjo, of course, that's not at all possible. Neither do you have the capability of playing the chords themselves, but you don't have the range that the piano has. I mean, piano has really the most extended range of any instrument, acoustical instrument, I should say. So I'm very curious to hear what I haven't heard yet. I haven't been in rehearsal yet with Béla Fleck, and I'm going to be very curious to hear. In fact, I've written to his team and I said, "Are there any cuts that you know about or that I should know about, either in the full orchestral score or in the solo parts? Because that would be very important to know." And I think the orchestra should know about it as well as the conductor. So we'll see. But I think it. Look, let's face it. Béla Fleck has been around for a while. He is a phenomenal. Well, he's basically a living legend at this point. I've never heard the banjo played the way Béla Fleck can play it.
Yeah.
It goes beyond what I always considered a kind of folk instrument to be. I lump it in with the harmonica, the accordion, those instruments that don't generally get selected to play within an orchestra. It's only in recent years that they've begun to solo in front of the orchestra. But there are those kinds of instruments, and he is such a virtuoso on the banjo. It's, I think, worth noting that he has, I think, at 19 now Grammy Awards and was nominated over 30 times for Grammy. He has played with everybody from I don't know, Led Zeppelin, I think, to Joshua Bell. It just covers the gamut, and it's brilliant when you think of it. And also, if you look him up on Wikipedia or Google him somewhere to find out what his background is, you find that he was absolutely smitten with the instrument. His passion was the banjo. That's all he wanted to do. He went to,
Yeah.
I think, there's something like the New York School for the Arts, and went in as a French horn player. And I always got a kick out of this because he flunked out of that and they threw him into chorus. I thought, wait a minute. And then I think he wasn't even interested in that, and he just went on his own way and began to really study the banjo very, very, very seriously because it was his passion. And I think he is a great example for anyone in any walk of life and with any kind of profession in mind, that if you find what your passion is and you do your passion, everything else follows after that. That's the
Yeah.
important. And
I
I've
know
always said that.
he said in interviews before when he first heard jazz music, for example, he was like, I need to figure out how to do that on my own, how to do
Right,
that on the banjo. So that's
right.
the thing that I think is really different about him is that he really forged his own path.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that he finds is a cool sound, he wants to apply it to the banjo, and that's amazing.
And he explored the instrument to make sounds and things, or effects, you might call them, that normally a banjo player wouldn't even think about doing. And it wasn't just a gimmick, he used it as part of his music making. I mean, that's the kind of artist that he is. And this is my first time collaborating with Béla Fleck, and I am just over the moon about it. I think it's a terrific opportunity for me, for our orchestra, our Lincoln Symphony Orchestra, and for our audience, our symphony family, to be exposed to someone of such great artistry. When I think we have gone in a way from Fleming to Fleck, you know,
Yeah,
it's it's really amazing and it's all part of what I consider, in a more formal sense, ongoing education. I mean, that's what it is to me. It's that sharing of the artistry of different aspects of the musical world, of what can exist and what are the possibilities, which it seems to be endless. So I think it's really wonderful. And I also want to now mention, before because I don't want to run out of time,
yeah,
that he wrote a concerto for banjo and full orchestra, and it's called the Juno Concerto, which
yeah.
is his firstborn son was named Juno, and he wrote it in honor of the birth of his firstborn. It is a brilliant work, structure-wise, pretty much the formal structure of three movements, as a concerto would be, with a slightly faster dramatic first movement, a slower, more lyrical middle movement, and then a very virtuosic, off the charts third movement. It has some incredible ensemble challenges that I have never seen before in a score, and I'm very curious to see how this is going to go. I think it's a phenomenal piece of music. If you know Béla Fleck, you're going to be expecting certain things, but you may not get some of those certain things. But in this concerto, I think you get a little bit of everything. So everybody's going to be really bowled over by it.
I'm excited about the Juno Concerto, Ed, because I think his first experiment with writing a concerto for banjo and orchestra, he called The Imposter. And it was because he
uh,
felt like here's this banjo player, who's come up through bluegrass and jazz, inserting himself in an orchestral
Classical music
situation.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that he
yeah.
felt like a bit of an imposter. But the cool thing is that when he wrote that one, each movement, there's more of an acceptance as you get through to the end. So I'm just fascinated to see how he
Yes.
continues to write for banjo and orchestra, including the transcription and, of course, the Juno Concerto,
Right.
named after his son. So this pairs then with pairs. There's not two, there's three pieces. This is put with, on the same program, another piece by Gershwin, which I just think is an amazing and fun piece to think about. To
I
me, An American in Paris always creates pictures in your mind.
can't help it, right? You just can't help it.
Can't help it. And again, Gershwin did some unique things, I think, experimenting with sounds in this in order to do that.
That's right. He was. It was a result of his first trip to Paris, France. And one of the things you learn about right in the very beginning of the piece is these taxi cab horns going off inside the orchestra. And so you could just see him walking into the street, and almost getting hit by a taxi, and people blowing their horns, and and all the commotion of a very busy Parisian boulevard or street. And it's a brilliant way. It's always been one of my very favorite pieces, especially of Gershwin, but in general, to conduct. It's not. It's very challenging for the orchestra, because I don't think there are three or four measures that go in the same tempo ever. It's always changing, and so it's this kind of kaleidoscopic musical picture of a day in the life of somebody visiting in Paris, and it's brilliant. And even if you don't know the title of An American in Paris, you're going to recognize just about every single theme from it.
You
And
know,
that now you can use the word. It is paired with the Rhapsody in Blue.
Paired with, yeah, it's
Right.
paired with the Rhapsody in Blue, right?
Right. There you go.
I had a question for you, Ed, about the taxi horns that you mentioned, because I know reading about this or hearing it, people often mention that he actually brought back real horns from Paris in the
Yes.
1920s to use. So how do orchestras do that now? What do you use? How do you source the instrument for the taxi horns?
Well, it's become somewhat, I think, somewhat standardized. I think my percussion players could inform me a little bit more about this. But from what I've seen in the past, is that taxi cab horns for the orchestra always come in sets of four, and they go from kind of highest to lowest. I think they're about a third, major third, or fourth, fifth apart. So they start from the higher one down to the lower one. Um, and in the American in Paris, you hear bop 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 bop
Yeah.
bop bop bop. Then you hear it bop 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 bop, and then you hear bop 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 bop. So you get to, oh my God, there's more than one taxi cab in Paris. That's. But it's. I think it's become somewhat standardized. So I don't know if anybody else has ever used those horns. It could have been somebody like Ebert, for all I know. He would be probably crazy enough to do that. But I think it's an interesting kind of sound effect. That
Yeah.
but it still has a pitch that is totally unrelated to whatever else is going on, which makes it, of course, stand out, along with the kind of squawkiness of what a horn is, particularly if you're talking about the 1920s automobiles.
I think we should come up with a list, Ed, of specific instruments the orchestra has to keep on hand just for one standard piece. So you got horns for Gershwin. I'm thinking a recording of a nightingale for Respighi, and you got to have a
Right?
cannon backstage for the 1812. So,
That's right.
but
That's
you're
right.
only going to use it for those pieces. So
That's it. That's about it.
got to
That's
have them on
about it.
hand. What are you going to do?
You know,
So when does the orchestra get to start rehearsing music like this that's brand new, this Juno concerto? I mean, Rhapsody in Blue, they're familiar with. And I think the challenge there is going to be it's an arrangement and it's different. If you've played it a billion times, you're not listening for the same things that you're used to
right.
listening to. But with the Juno concerto, it's all new. What's that like from the standpoint of your musicians?
Well, it's challenging all around. I mean, I found things in this score that I found very challenging myself on how exactly to conduct this, so that it's clear to the orchestra. And what I mentioned earlier about ensemble challenges within the orchestra, um, just to back up for a second, Béla Fleck has this phenomenal technique where his picking is unbelievably even, and even rhythmically and even tone wise. So you hear kind of this constant rhythmic pattern of in whatever it is. It could be 16th notes, quintuplets, sextuplets, septuplets, and it begins to shift the beats quite a bit. And the other challenge of that is that it would be one thing if you kind of established that and then you got into a groove, but you do it for maybe one measure, two measures, and then the meter changes. And then the meter changes again, and it changes again and again and again and again. So it's constantly like a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, and 2, like I don't know which way to go with, how to make that happen. Um, the orchestra will get their music. I think it's 3 weeks
Mm.
before the beginning of each rehearsal period. So they have a chance, of course, to maybe go online if it's something totally unfamiliar, see if there's a recording of it, listen to it, have their part in front of them, get familiar with it. I'm actually very proud of our orchestra that fits the name professional really beautifully, because they're very prepared, and they will come into rehearsal having their whole matrix of what this is all about already set. So I fit into that and then bring it all together, with 70 or 75 different people, putting them all together, making it happen as one. But when you have a banjo playing, and then you have all the winds and the strings also going, and they have to be in exact sync with the banjo. That's an ensemble challenge. That's very, because the Béla will be just to my left, but for the rest of the orchestra, he may be couple of football fields away. You might as well be in Beatrice when you're on the other side of the stage, because by the time the sound carries, so
Yeah.
there will be those kinds of challenges. But I have every confidence that it's going to be a great performance, and I'm really looking forward to this. I cannot wait to hear what Rhapsody in Blue sounds like on the banjo. Really, I think it's
And
going to be.
And on the 100th anniversary, I just think it's cool to celebrate such a thing this year, a kind of merging of jazz and concert hall music.
Right.
And by the way, we just have like a minute left, but a piece that Gershwin didn't know he was writing until the last minute either.
That's
And
right. That's right. He was on a train ride with his brother up from Florida, and he happened to read it in the paper that there was going to be this brand new premiere of a piece in Carnegie Hall that was going to be like 3 weeks away, and I think
he's like,
George
oh, news
Gershwin,
to me. Yeah.
yeah, he said, "When did this come about?" And I think his brother said, "Oh, didn't I tell you about that? I forgot." And out of adversity, that's so often the way it happens, but out comes this magnificent, ingenious, really heartfelt, and one of the most popular piano pieces for piano and orchestra ever written. I mean, it's a
So
great
cool.
piece of music. I mean, just ask United Airlines; they play it all the time.
Right? It's
Right?
true. It's been used a lot of places. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Well, I just think everybody's going to enjoy this concert no matter when you're watching this, whether it's right before the concert or whether you're seeing this a few days ahead. A Saturday night concert, so that's a little bit new if you're watching this ahead. Saturday, March 9th, 7:30 p.m. at the Leeds Center for Performing Arts. The symphony is going to start with Béla playing his concerto called the Juno Concerto, which is named for his son, his oldest kid, followed by Gershwin's An American in Paris. So Béla gets a break and the orchestra gets to take us through the Paris streets. And then everybody in the hall gets to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the composition of Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue with
it's great.
Béla Fleck's new transcription of that work for banjo and orchestra with our maestro here, Ed Polachek, conducting. Amazing, Ed. And thank you so much for joining me for this pre-concert chat. These are always fun.
Yeah, they are, and I couldn't live without them, Genevieve. I just love knowing them. You're the best. Thank you.